Welcome back, friends. Tonight we travel far, far back in time to the arid heat and shadowy ritual chambers of ancient Egypt, where you, yes, you, have just been hired for one of the most unpleasant jobs ever invented by civilization: brain extractor. The moment you step into the embalmer's quarters, your nose is the first to protest. The stench is like a dozen burnt onions married a wet sponge and moved into a sun-baked tomb. It's sharp and sour, yet sickly sweet, and somehow warm, like it's actively trying to climb up into your sinuses and take root. You're hit with a wave of nausea that threatens to send you right back out into the blinding sun of the Nile Valley. But you can't leave. Not yet. You're the new guy. So before you get too comfortable, hit like and subscribe, but only if I've earned it. No pressure, no hard feelings. Oh, and if you're listening from somewhere special, drop your location and local time in the comments. I always love seeing where and when you're tuning in from. Now go ahead and dim the lights, maybe curl up with a blanket, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You don't even get a welcome speech. The master embalmer just squints at you over a tray of waxy entrails and mutters something about not dropping the nostril hook this time. Before you can ask what that means, you're shoved into a dark corner of the hut, where clay jars, linen bundles, and bundles of suspiciously brown towels wait for your untrained hands. It's humid in here despite the desert air outside. Like every exhaled breath from the dead is still hanging around the room. There's a corpse already laid out. She's a middle-class widow, or so you're told. Nothing royal, but she's paid for the full treatment. Which, unfortunately for you, means the full treatment. You notice that her nose is oddly flattened, like someone had already given it a good whack. That someone is probably the guy whose job you just inherited. The first step isn't the worst, but it's close. You've got to anoint the body with a fragrant oil mixture, which is supposed to purify and prepare the skin. It smells better than everything else, but only just. Think crushed lilies and pine sap with a distinct undertone of this oil once spent a summer in a grave. You smear it on with trembling fingers, trying to avoid eye contact with the widow's half-lidded stare. Your fellow workers don't make things easier. One is chewing date paste and watching you like he's placing bets on whether you'll pass out. Another is fanning himself with a bit of old papyrus that may or may not have a sacred spell written on it. No one speaks unless it's to bark instructions, or worse, issue low chuckles when you nearly gag. You try to focus on the process. You were told it's sacred. You're not just gutting people, you're preparing them for the afterlife. The soul needs a clean exit, they said. The body is a house, and you're on janitorial duty for eternity's sake. This should feel noble, but mostly it feels sticky. As the sun rises higher, so does the temperature in the hut. The flies grow bolder, no longer just buzzing, they land. On your hands, your face, the corpse. You swipe them away, only to have two more replace each. There's a faint sizzle coming from a copper tray by the window, where some tool left too long in the sun is practically melting into the wood. You inch toward a shelf stacked with jars of natron, a naturally occurring salt mix that does most of the drying in this process. The jars are labelled, but not in any script you can read. You grab the one with the fewest insect legs floating on top. Congratulations. You're now halfway to becoming the least glamorous spa technician in history. And just when you're thinking this job couldn't get worse, the master embalmer calls out your name, well, a vague approximation of it, and beckons you over with the crook of a suspiciously red-stained finger. He points to a waxy head resting in a shallow trough. You, try nose today. Your stomach drops. You were hoping to ease into this, maybe just handle the linen or work up to the incense. But no. Today, you start with the nose. Now remember, this is ancient Egypt. No scalpels, no precision tools. What you have instead is a bronze hook, bent at just the right angle to reach deep into the nasal cavity, through the nostril, and, brace yourself, scramble up the brain like a historical egg beater. The dead woman's face looks peaceful. That's about to change. You approach, hook trembling in your fingers. The angle is tricky. You're supposed to push upward and in, break through a very thin section of skull behind the nasal cavity, and then start scooping. The breaking through part is more of a squish-pop-crack, which you are absolutely not ready for. The sound alone is enough to make you wish you'd gone into papyrus farming. You're told to drain the brain into a small ceramic basin. Don't spill, the assistant mutters. She paid for precision. Historians still argue whether this part of the process was purely symbolic or believed to be functionally necessary for the soul's journey. Some say the brain wasn't considered important at all, more a formality than a sacred rite. Others believe that removing it was thought to keep the body from rotting too fast. Either way, it's your job now. A fringe theory you overheard while scrubbing linens last night claims some embalmers used heated metal rods to liquefy the brain before extraction. You eye the fire pit nervously and pray no one hands you one of those. The worst part isn't the smell, or the squelch. It's the sheer realisation of how fragile and gross the human body is. You feel like a villain in a bad play. There's brain goo on your forearm. How did it get there? You don't even know. One of your co-workers pats you on the back. You didn't faint. Good start. Then he offers you a chunk of stale bread like you've just won an award. But this is only the beginning. You don't sleep that night. Not because of the heat, though that certainly doesn't help, but because every time you shut your eyes you see that bronze hook. It glints behind your eyelids like a curse. You wake before sunrise with straw stuck to your face and the taste of copper in your mouth. Is it guilt? Nerves? Or is the embalmer's hut just that contaminated? You trudge back to work, your feet already dragging. Today, they say, you'll be introduced to the rest of your tools. Great. Because what better way to spend your morning than learning how to scoop out organs with what looks like a barbed melon baller? The work table is already set. Laid out neatly on reed mats are implements that look less like surgical instruments and more like something your older cousin would dare you to touch and then laugh when you get tetanus. There are curved knives made of bronze, a few of obsidian for special clients, and an assortment of hooks and spatulas, none of which you'd want anywhere near your person, living or dead. You're handed something described as the intestinal extractor. It's long, curved, and suspiciously flexible. You'll get the hang of it, someone says, entirely too cheerfully. Next to it is a small, flat blade for slicing open the left side of the body. Always the left, they remind you, to avoid insulting the gods. You don't ask why the gods care about lateral incisions. You just nod and take it. The real surprise, though, is the resin. Buckets of it, bubbling faintly, dark as pitch and smelling like if pine tar and bad perfume had a child. Resin is sacred. It seals the body, halts decay, and supposedly traps the car, the soul's double, inside the body until it can reunite with the bay in the afterlife. You try to sound reverent, but mostly you're worried it's going to splash on your only tunic. Historians still argue whether the exact resin formula was a closely guarded trade secret, or something passed down orally in specific embalming schools. Some recipes include frankincense, cedar oil, myrrh, beeswax, and animal fat. Others whisper about more experimental ingredients. One story, probably told to haze newcomers like you, involves a jar labelled simply essence of ibis. You try not to think too hard about how that's harvested. You get your first lesson in cutting open the body today. It's not elegant. The skin has the texture of softened leather, but the moment the blade pierces the surface, the scent turns violent, like a rotten fig left in the sun, dipped in iron. You have to hold your breath, but not obviously, because the others are watching. You're the new one. Weakness makes you a target. After the incision, your job is to insert your hand and feel around. Yes, with your bare hand. Gloves? Not invented. Squeamishness? Not allowed. You find the liver first. It's smooth, large, slippery. Supposedly the gods admire it. The stomach comes next, and then the lungs, spongy and blackened if the person smoked too many papyrus reeds. Finally the intestines, which are a labyrinth all on their own. Each organ is supposed to be washed, treated with natron, and placed into a special container, canopic jars, each guarded by one of the sons of Horus. The human-headed Imseti guards the liver. Hapi, the baboon, takes the lungs. Duamutef, with his jackal head, protects the stomach. And Kebesenuef, the falcon, holds the intestines. You memorize their names with all the enthusiasm of a kid cramming for a test he didn't study for. One of the jars is missing a lid. The embalmer shrugs and places a slab of stone over it. The gods understand, he says. You doubt it, but you don't argue. You're still trying to get the smell of stomach acid off your hands. Your fringe fact of the day comes when one of the apprentices tells you about a rumoured elite embalmer who made his fortune by secretly harvesting organs from royal mummies for magical potions. Powdered pharaoh spleen, he whispers. Very powerful. Very illegal. You don't know whether to be horrified or impressed. The tools start to feel less alien as the day goes on. Your fingers no longer tremble when wrapping them around a probe. You learn to listen to the silence in the hut. The way it shifts when something goes wrong. When resin bubbles too high, or the linen wrap tightens just a bit too soon, the room tenses. Every embalmer knows the signs. You don't. Not yet. At one point you drop the lung, just plop, right onto the floor. The priest overseeing today's ritual glares at you so hard you feel your kidneys shrivel. He says nothing, but someone mutters, "You'll be feeding crocodiles by dusk." A joke, probably. Hopefully. You clean up quickly, mumbling an apology to the baboon-headed jar like it might snitch. The day drags. You oil the tools, scrub the resin pots, and try to ignore the chorus of insects buzzing against the hut's woven reed walls. You catch yourself humming under your breath, some half-remembered lullaby from your childhood, just to drown out the sucking sound a body makes when the kidneys finally let go. At sunset, you're told to pack everything up. There's no good job, no pat on the back, just a nod that maybe you didn't completely mess up. You step outside into the cooling desert air, gulping it like you've just been rescued from a smokehouse. You think you're done for the day. You're not. The embalmer hands you a cloth and points to the blood-slicked floor where you and your tools made a proper mess. "We do not begin a new day in filth," he says. You think about arguing. Then you look into his eyes, dead calm, sun-weathered, probably once locked with the eyes of a pharaoh, and you nod. You start scrubbing. By the time the stars are overhead, your fingers are pruned, your legs are shaking, and you've developed a very serious grudge against whatever ancient genius thought the human body needed so many organs, and you haven't even touched the heart yet. You wake with resin in your hair. You're not even sure how it got there. You could have sworn you wore the head wrap yesterday. Then again, you also thought embalming might be a little cleaner than this. Spoiler, it's not. You're not given a morning greeting. No one is. The embalmer's hut has the atmosphere of a solemn kitchen where all the cooks secretly hate each other, but stay silent out of fear of divine judgment, or worse, a reprimand from the high priest. Today's focus is the brain again. Joy. Only this time, you're not just the newbie with the trembling hands. You're being watched by a group of visiting initiates from a nearby temple. Apparently nothing makes for better educational theatre than watching you struggle to reach cerebral jelly through a dead woman's nose. Your hands are steadier, but that doesn't make the task any less stomach-turning. The bronze hook, already darkened with age and old fluids, catches the light as you prepare for insertion. You remember the angle now, slightly upward, gentle pressure, until you feel that sickening crunch through the ethmoid bone. Your stomach turns a little, but you've learned how to swallow that down. You've also learned not to flinch when it cracks. You begin the stirring motion, slow, controlled. It's like scrambling eggs, if the eggs were sacred and the pan was a skull. A dark, viscous liquid begins to drain out, guided down a slight tilt into a ceramic catch basin. The colour is hard to describe, something between muddy wine and regret. The onlookers whisper. Someone stifles a gag. You feel smug for half a second. Then the hook catches, and suddenly you're reminded that the brain is not simple pudding. There's resistance, and you have to wiggle the tool just so to dislodge something. You feel a pop. You freeze. That's not normal. The embalmer notices. He walks over silently, peers into the basin, and grunts. "Bit too deep," he mutters. "Try not to scramble the eyes next time." Great. Add that to the list of things you've accidentally disturbed today. Now, here's the fun part. You're expected to do this repeatedly. See, while royal and elite bodies got the full treatment with attention to detail, many lower-class mummies received a quick and dirty version of brain extraction, sometimes skipping it altogether. But not today. This widow was wealthy enough to demand precision, and unfortunately for you, that's now your problem. You move on to a second body. This time, a man in his 40s. Bigger skull, more resistance. The nose is already misshapen from an earlier blow, which means navigating the passage is like spelunking through a collapsed tunnel. You break through with more effort. Too much effort. The tool bends. The embalmer sighs audibly behind you. Hook's ruined. We melt it and recast. He gives you a look. Next one comes from your barley allowance. Fringe fact of the day. Some embalmers were known to pre-soften the brain by injecting oils through the nostril using reeds as makeshift syringes. One whispered tale speaks of a clever embalmer in Thebes who swore by crocodile bile infusion. Unsurprisingly, he died blind and wheezing. You at least are using plain hooks and raw talent. Questionable talent, but still. The ritual scribe enters halfway through your third extraction. He's small, hunched, with a permanent scowl etched into his face, like someone taught him math with a fist. He doesn't touch anything. He doesn't need to. He's here to watch, to document every step, ensure no sacred rule is broken. You forgot the incense blessing, he hisses, nodding toward the brazier in the corner. No purification flame, no soul passage. You're binding the car to a dirty vessel. You mumble an apology, fumble for a pinch of myrrh, and toss it into the coals. A small puff of fragrant smoke wafts upward, mixing with the far less delightful smells of blood, resin, and heat. The scribe glares at you like you personally offended Thoth. Historians still argue whether the extraction itself was more functional or spiritual. Was the process about preventing decay, or was it meant to open a metaphysical doorway for the soul's release? It's a question you'd ponder more if you weren't elbow deep in someone's sinuses. Midday brings no break. You wipe your face with a cloth that is, objectively, too stiff to be doing anything useful. Your tunic clings to you like a damp second skin. You drink water when you're allowed, which is almost never. Someone shares a dried fig with you. It's hard as a brick and tastes faintly like embalming powder. You eat it anyway. By now, the work has become mechanical. Insert, break, swirl, drain. But the mental fatigue, that's what gets you. You begin to disassociate slightly. Your hands move, but your mind drifts. You think about how no one prepared you for the details. For example, the subtle way flesh tugs when the skull is opened, or how the smell doesn't fade. It just changes like it's evolving through the stages of decomposition. Or how sometimes, just sometimes, the eye twitches as pressure shifts inside the head. You know it's just physics, but still. The worst moment comes at dusk. The final corpse of the day, a young woman no more than 20, is brought in. Her skin is pale, preserved by shade and herbs, but her expression is peaceful. Too peaceful. You hesitate. The embalmer notices. He gives you a quiet nod. This work honours her. Don't flinch. So you don't. You do what you've learned. You whisper a small prayer as you begin. Not the official one. They haven't taught you that. Just something from your mother, long ago, about safe passage and gentle hands. And this time you don't make a mistake. The brain drains smoothly. The hook glides clean. Even the scribe says nothing. When it's done, you sit. Just for a moment. Your legs ache, your hands tremble, and you smell like yesterday's nightmares. But you did it. Sort of. The sun dips below the horizon. Insects buzz. The hut is lit by flickering oil lamps, casting shadows that dance like spirits on the walls. You clean your tools in silence, wrap them in cloth, place them back in their baskets with care. And then, just as you're about to leave, the embalmer chuckles. Not bad, he says. You might even last another day. You don't know whether that's a compliment or a threat. You learn quickly that not every body is treated the same. In fact, once you know what to look for, it becomes painfully obvious. A body's status in life follows it straight into the afterlife, or at least into how many linen wraps it gets on the way there. Today you're working on a high priest's wife. The hut is quieter than usual. There's more incense burning, the linen is brighter, and someone actually swept the floor. You overhear a whisper that the payment for this one included not just barley but a goat. A whole goat. You'd kill for a goat. She's laid out with her arms crossed, her mouth open slightly like she's halfway through a last sentence. The smell is better. She'd been partially preserved with imported oils even before she died. This is rare. You can almost imagine this was what embalming was meant to be like. Clean, quiet, dignified. You begin by bathing her in palm wine and water laced with natron. Holy purification mix. The scent is sharp but not putrid. As you rub her arms and torso, you notice the gold amulet tucked under her collarbone. No one touches it. That would be unwise. Then the wrapping begins. Linen, yards and yards of it, coated in resin, sometimes dusted with spices or sacred powders. A small pouch is tucked into the folds at her chest, a scarab charm, meant to guide her heart's confession during the weighing of the soul. It's a privilege, having one of those. Most get a clay copy or nothing at all. Wrap slowly, the embalmer tells you. Symmetry pleases the gods. You try, but linen is fussy. It wrinkles, it bunches. By the third wrap, your hands are sweating and your brows dripping onto the sacred folds. You mutter a quiet apology to Osiris and keep going. Then you see it. Off in the corner, barely covered by a cloth, lies another body. You recognise the signs: sun-darkened skin, torn wrappings, and the smell. That smell of meat left too long in the sun. This one did not come with a goat. That's a field labourer, one of your fellow apprentices says. Cheap burial. Family paid in bread and thanks. You glance down at your pristine high priestess, then back at the labourer's dried out form. The contrast is brutal. His brain hasn't even been removed. Neither have the organs from the bulge of the belly. This one got a sprinkle of natron, maybe, and a quick roll in linen. His canopic jars are mismatched, one probably stolen from a previous burial. No scarab, no ceremony, just another body in the queue. You help wrap him anyway. It feels wrong to rush, but time is money. And this man didn't bring much of either. Historians still argue whether the economic disparities in mummification were as extreme as they appear in modern tomb records, or if some lower-class citizens received more elaborate rites through temple charity. But in your corner of the embalmer's hut, it's very clear. The gods might love all, but their human representatives have a very particular sliding scale. As the day goes on, the hierarchy of the dead becomes clearer. You work on a merchant's son next. Not noble, but not destitute. He gets decent resin, a formal spell, and even a small funerary mask, wooden, but painted with care. His skin is smoother. His burial linens include a little embroidery, a detail, a kindness. Later, a nobleman's pet monkey is brought in. Yes, really. A monkey. It's dressed in jewellery and still has a tiny collar made of gold links. You're told not to laugh. The scribe explains, deadpan, that this monkey was greatly beloved and will accompany the Lord in eternity. You nod, keep your smirk to yourself, and begin the process. It's surprisingly similar. Smaller tools, lighter linen, more peanut stink. Fringe fact. Some animal mummies, especially cats, ibises and crocodiles, were mass-produced as offerings, not actual pets. But the elite animals, they got the full afterlife passport, even little Tut-Tut the monkey here. You start to notice patterns. Royal bodies are heavier, better fed, better preserved. They bleed less post-mortem, probably thanks to those fancy pre-death treatments. Their nails are often dyed, their teeth sometimes gold-capped. One pharaoh's mistress even had a scented wax cone on her head. It melted over time, soaking her scalp with perfume. Apparently that was romantic. Meanwhile, the poor, their bodies are thinner, lighter. Their skin often bears calluses, scars or burn marks, and their mummification often skips steps. No natron baths, just a dry cave and hope. Some were simply left in the desert, wrapped in cloth and prayers. The sun, ironically, preserved them better than a rush job in a cheap embalmer's hut. You ask the embalmer gently if he ever feels bad. His answer is a shrug. We do what's paid for. Gods see through wrappings. You want to believe that. You do. But later, as you help lift the merchant's son into his coffin, carefully, reverently, you wonder what's really waiting on the other side for those who couldn't afford the deluxe package. A colleague tells you about a scandal in Memphis, where a group of embalmers reused royal wrappings to save time. They were caught when a lesser noble's mummy was found wrapped in fabric bearing another family's sigil. Head rolled, he says. Literally or politically, you ask? He doesn't answer. By the time you finish with the day's work, your back is sore and your fingertips are permanently stained a muddy bronze from handling so much resin. The sun is dipping low again, and you've breathed in so much incense that you now associate frankincense with exhaustion. You stagger outside for a breath of real air and spot the monkey's tiny sarcophagus being carried toward the burial barge. It's shaped like a miniature throne, complete with painted eyes and a solemn expression carved into the wood. You can't help but laugh, just a little. The monkey got better treatment than most people you know. That night, you dream of linen. It coils around you, endless, tight, like you're the one being wrapped, bound, silenced, judged. In your dream, a scribe whispers your name and makes a mark on his scroll. You ask if you passed. He shakes his head. You wake up with your blanket tangled around your legs, drenched in sweat. The work continues tomorrow. The scribe is waiting when you arrive. He stands like a shadow by the entrance, ink-stained fingers clasped neatly behind his back, eyes narrowed beneath his cowl. He doesn't nod, doesn't speak, just watches. You've seen that expression before. It's the look of someone deciding whether to write your name on a scroll or cross it out completely. Today, you're being tested. Not on technique, you already failed that when you dropped half a lung last week, but on ritual accuracy. You'll perform under the eyes of the priest, the scribe, and worst of all, your co-workers, who have gathered like vultures for the performance. No pressure. The body's laid out already. A minor court official from what you hear. Likes dates, hated his third wife, died suddenly during an argument over a goat. Standard stuff. He's been cleaned, oiled, and positioned for the next stage, the opening of the body. That's you. You begin with the ritual prayer, your voice dry, cracked, like it forgot how to speak after too many hours of silent labour. "Oh, Anubis, guide my hand." You fumble the next line. The scribe's reed pen freezes mid-scroll. You glance at the embalmer. He doesn't move. You keep going. The incision must be made on the left side, always. It's where life enters, or so they say. And the gods, being gods, are very picky about symmetry. You measure the spot with your eyes, 2 fingers below the ribs, angled slightly. Your blade slips in with a soft hiss. You wince. It's cleaner than yesterday, but not perfect. The moment the cut is made, the scribe chants the curse of the slicer. It's symbolic, of course, a way to distance the sin of harming the body from the person doing it. Still, hearing the words aimed at you makes your spine twitch. You are the breaker of flesh, and thus accursed. May your own wound never heal. Nice. You continue, placing the removed organs in their assigned jars. You almost place the lungs in the jackal-headed one. Again. But catch yourself. The scribe notices. He scribbles something. You suppress a groan. The ritual is full of these kinds of traps, tiny missteps that could offend the gods or worse, embarrass your boss. There's a very particular order for each step. The oils must be applied in a set sequence. The bandaging must begin with the right foot. And under no circumstances should you sneeze during the mouth sealing. Fringe fact. In rare, elite cases, embalmers would even insert false eyes into the mummy, made of glass, stone, or painted wood, to give the dead a more awake appearance. You remember this as you gently push a pair of polished onyx beads into the court official's hollow sockets. He looks surprised. Understandable. The scribe circles the table like a desert hawk. He points out that you've wrapped the left arm too tightly. The car may find resistance in the journey. You want to point out that the car doesn't have a physical elbow. You wisely don't. You whisper apologies under your breath. Some for the dead man, some for the gods, and maybe one for your past self who thought this job sounded kind of cool. Historians still argue whether the exact wording of these rites remained consistent across centuries, or if they evolved depending on region, scribe, and priestly interpretation. Some texts suggest multiple versions of the opening of the mouth ceremony alone, some involving an adze, others a spoon-shaped tool, still others using both. You're handed the spoon. The priest arrives halfway through. He's tall, draped in leopard skin and gold-threaded linen, eyes lined with kohl so thick it looks like a mask. His presence changes the room. Everyone straightens. You stop breathing. He nods once. Proceed. You hold the ritual spoon aloft. I open your mouth so you may speak in the next life. I open your eyes so you may see the gods. The words tumble out, practiced now, but still tinged with nerves. You press the spoon to the dead man's lips, touch his eyes gently, then rest it over his heart. You wait. Silence. The priest grunts approvingly. He leaves. You exhale, shoulders sagging, but the scribe, still there, still watching. He hands you a strip of papyrus at the end of the ritual. It has your name, followed by a single glyph. A feather. That's good. That means balance. Order. You passed. Sort of. The embalmer slaps your back as you walk away. You didn't drop anything. Progress. You feel like a dog who didn't chew the sandals. Later, as you scrub the tools in a basin of sour wine and ash, a co-worker leans over and whispers, "You know he really does curse people, right? The scribe." Old apprentice swears he woke up with boils after a sloppy rap. You laugh nervously. Then you remember your sudden nosebleed that morning and stop laughing. Still, you have to admit, today felt different. You weren't just scooping or rapping. You were part of something larger, a system older than kings, a ritual that's been repeated for centuries with eerie precision. And yet, you can't shake the feeling that if you make one wrong move, you'll not only offend the gods, you'll be spending the afterlife trying to find your own brain in a mislabeled jar. As the sun sets, you light incense on your own. No one told you to. You just feel better when the air smells of something other than death. You walk home with resin on your arms, linen fibres stuck in your hair, and the scribe's feather symbol still in your pocket. You rub it between your fingers and wonder if it's a sign of hope or just good handwriting. Either way, you survived another day, and tomorrow, there's a rumour, you'll be assisting on a royal extraction. Try not to faint. The first thing they tell you is, don't speak unless spoken to. The second thing, keep your hands clean. Always. The third, whispered of course, is don't look her directly in the eyes. Today, you're assisting in the preparation of a royal concubine, which means the stakes are sky high. The supervisors are twice as grumpy, and someone's definitely going to blame you if anything goes sideways. This is high-tier mummification. There are more layers of protocol than there are linen wraps, and you're somehow expected to remember everyone. When you enter the chamber, yes, chamber, not the hut, you're hit with a blast of chilled air. Chilled, because this room is partly subterranean and cleverly ventilated with ducts lined in polished limestone. Even the air is rich. You suppress a cough and try not to stare. She lies on a raised alabaster slab surrounded by braziers burning imported incense, lotus oil, cinnamon bark, possibly something else you can't identify, something sweet and foreign. Her skin has been pre-treated with oils and already looks golden, almost radiant. Her fingernails are painted. Her lips are stained a delicate reddish hue. She's been dead for days and still manages to look more regal than you do at your best. You step forward cautiously. The embalmer, not your usual one, this one has gold-threaded sleeves, nods at you, signalling it's time to assist with the removal of her heart. Yes, the heart, the most sacred, most symbolically charged organ in the entire body. You've never been allowed near it before. You probably shouldn't be now. Do not drop it, the priest says flatly, or may the jackals feast on your memory. Helpful, you hold the vessel, the one shaped like a seated falcon, and wait while the chief embalmer slices open the chest cavity with a curved blade so sharp it sings through the flesh like papyrus tearing. There's almost no smell. Royal bodies are pre-treated with special herbs and buried quickly. You glimpse the heart, small and dark, nestled like a stone in a cavity of polished bone. He removes it with delicate hands and places it into your trembling fingers. You almost cry. Not because you're moved, though, all right, a little, but because the heart is still warm from the herbal compresses. You weren't ready for that. Carefully, reverently, you place it in the falcon-headed jar. It fits perfectly. You let go and step back, exhaling through your nose. Not terrible, someone mutters behind you. Possibly a compliment. Historians still argue whether the heart was always removed or sometimes left in place to be weighed in the afterlife. Some mummies were found with stones in their chest cavities instead. Heart scarabs, engraved with protective spells. One theory suggests the original heart was too decayed or removed by accident, and a symbolic replacement had to do the job. Fringe tidbit. There's a legend about a queen's embalmer who was executed because he spoke too sweetly about the beauty of the body. No one knows if it's true, but the tale is enough to keep your compliments strictly internal. Next comes the wrapping. This is no slapdash job. Each limb is individually wrapped, finger by finger, toe by toe, padded with resin-soaked strips and layers of powdered incense. You're told to chant a phrase as you do. She walks in light, untouched by decay. You say it in a whisper, over and over, like a lullaby. It's mid-afternoon when the flies arrive. You'd think royalty would deter them, but no. Flies don't care for titles. One lands squarely on your forehead. You can't swat it. Your hands are resin-slick and sacred. You twitch slightly. The embalmer sees. He raises an eyebrow. You consider letting the fly lay eggs there if it means not getting scolded. And then, suddenly, a screech. You all freeze. It came from outside near the storage annex, a loud, guttural yowl like a cat caught in a trap. Then again, closer this time. Someone mutters, Sekhmet's breath. You step toward the doorway and there it is. A cat statue, barely 2 feet tall, sitting upright in the middle of the corridor. It wasn't there earlier. Its eyes are painted blue, glass beads staring up at you like it knows your secrets. No one moves, no one speaks. Who touched the shrine? The priest demands. No one answers. The embalmer gestures to you, to remove it. Just pick it up. Simple. Except you've seen enough bad omens this week to know that's a fool's errand. Still, you step forward. Gently, slowly, you lift the statue. It's light, hollow. Feels like clay. Nothing happens, yet. You move it back to the shrine alcove and mutter a quiet apology to Bastet, the cat goddess, just in case. Everyone relaxes slightly. One of the workers offers you a honey date. For bravery, he says, like you just fought off a demon instead of relocating a possessed paperweight. You return to the chamber, hands slightly steadier. You help place the amulets within the wrappings, the Eye of Horus on the chest, a Djed pillar at the spine, a Tayet knot at the belly. Each has meaning. Each has a place. You dare not get it wrong. The final wrap goes over her face, a linen mask coated in resin and painted gold. She now looks like a statue of herself, serene and unchanging. The embalmer whispers a final blessing. The scribe writes a long entry. You stand at the edge, trying not to sweat visibly onto your sacred tunic. The sun is low when it ends. She's carried out, flanked by guards and priests, toward a prepared bark on the Nile. She'll be taken to the royal necropolis, entombed beside other concubines and court ladies, eternally preserved. You'll likely never see her again. As the chamber empties, you glance back one last time at the alabaster slab. It's already being cleaned for the next honoured guest. Later that night, back in your corner of the apprentice quarters, someone brings up the cat again. That statue only moves when someone lies during a rite, one whispers. You don't remember lying. Not exactly. But the statue definitely moved. You're halfway through your morning barley ration when someone shouts your name. Well, not exactly your name, more like the garbled version they've settled on, but close enough that your stomach drops anyway. You, linen duty? You freeze. Linen duty means wrapping. Wrapping means hours of tedium, sore wrists, and enough resin fumes to make you forget your own birthday. It also means chanting. Repetitive, mind-numbing, spirit-purifying chants, over and over and over again. You trudge into the prep room and, yep, there it is. A whole body laid out and half unwrapped, like someone lost motivation mid-mummification. Linen sheets are everywhere, bundles stacked in corners, strips soaking in resin, a tangled mess that smells like mildew and burnt pine. You step over a pile and immediately stick to the floor. Great start. The embalmer doesn't even look up. Wrap from the ankles up, 3 turns per joint. Chant with each layer, no humming. You mutter the standard opening line. May your feet carry you safely through the field of reeds, and begin wrapping the toes, individually. There are 10 of them, and they're clammy. The linen sticks at first. It's stiff from resin and oddly slippery at the same time. It squeaks as you pull it taut. You glance at your partner, who's wrapping the fingers with the quiet speed of someone who's done this so often they could do it in their sleep, and probably have. You, on the other hand, keep losing track of your count. Was that 3 turns around the ankle? Or 4? You undo the wrap, then redo it, then curse under your breath as it tears slightly. You pretend not to hear the sigh from the master wrapper nearby. The chanting begins again. This time, may your knees bend freely before the throne of Osiris. You say it with as much conviction as a bored student reciting multiplication tables. The words themselves have power, they say, but your voice is cracking, your knees are sore, and there's a smear of resin across your cheek that's drying into something very, very itchy. Historians still argue whether the wrapping process followed a strict sequence, or if it varied based on the embalmer's preferences and the deceased status. Some evidence points to standardised chants and wrapping diagrams found in temple archives, while other scholars believe the process was more intuitive, passed down through generations like a family recipe. You think it's a mix of both, structure with a healthy dose of panic improvisation. You move to the shins, then the thighs. Resin-soaked strips go on next, thicker, warmer, more fragrant. It's like wrapping a hot loaf of bread that used to be a person. Your fringe tidbit today? One of the older embalmers tells you about a particularly fashionable nobleman who insisted on being mummified wearing a golden kilt. Stylish even in death, he says, chuckling. Took us twice as long. You ever try wrapping linen around metal pleats? You have not, and you hope you never will. Around mid-morning you're called to help with the next step, ritual bandage knots. Each one has meaning. Some secure specific amulets, others are tied at key joints, elbows, shoulders, hips, to protect the body's motion in the afterlife. Your fingers are already aching, but you concentrate. One wrong twist and the whole wrap can unravel. Or worse, someone notices. Say the line, the supervisor grunts. You blink. Right. The line. May your limbs be strong in the hall of judgment, you whisper, tying the knot with a tug that's maybe just a little too tight. Not that line. The left arm line. Of course. Because each limb gets its own line. You want to scream, but instead you clear your throat and say, "May your left arm bear your staff of peace." Satisfied, the supervisor nods. You return to wrapping, your chant now a low drone. Eventually you reach the torso. This is where it gets complicated. Each internal organ had already been removed and treated, but now their respective regions are wrapped with symbolic care. The chest gets extra layers. Sometimes herbs, sometimes protective oils, sometimes actual notes written on bits of papyrus and slipped beneath the linen. One scribe once wrote a tiny poem and left it by the heart cavity. You wonder if that soul ever got confused in the afterlife, trying to recite a love ballad to Anubis. You begin wrapping the head. This is the most delicate part. Every angle must be precise. The face must hold its shape beneath the layers. You dab a small amount of resin across the brow and begin the final chant. May your voice speak truth before the gods. Suddenly someone sneezes. It's loud, violent, unmistakably human. Everyone stops. You freeze mid-rap. You're not supposed to sneeze during a ceiling chant. It's bad luck. It's unclean. You all stare at the culprit, an apprentice who immediately goes pale and mutters something about allergies. Cleanse the air, the embalmer snaps. Again. And so, the incense is relit. The chant is restarted. You redo the wrap on the forehead, and your arms are now trembling so hard you have to brace yourself against the stone table. The afternoon stretches long. 1 body, 2, then 3. The last one is half wrapped when you realise you've been humming the chants under your breath, in a rhythm dangerously close to a popular tavern tune. You stop before anyone notices. Hopefully. By the end, your hands are coated in resin. Your back is a twisted knot of pain, and your voice is almost gone from hours of quiet prayer. But the bodies are wrapped, the knots are tied, the chants are spoken. You helped deliver 3 souls to the afterlife today. Not bad for someone who still confuses the Eye of Horus with the Eye of Ra. One protects, the other judges. Big difference. Huge. As you clean up, you notice something odd. A linen scrap that wasn't used. It has a single symbol painted on it in red ink. An unfamiliar glyph. You ask about it. The supervisor snatches it away without a word. Moments later it's tossed into the brazier, flames curling hungrily around the fabric until it's gone. You don't ask again. That night your dreams are slow and sticky. You're wrapping a body that keeps getting longer. The linen never runs out, neither do the chants. You wake up mid-sentence mumbling, "May your ears hear the voice of Ma'at." You don't remember learning that one. You know it's going to be a bad day when the barley doesn't show up. It's early, sun barely up, and you're already sweating in your linen shift. A group of workers are standing around the storehouse, arms crossed, muttering things like delayed boat and someone angered Sobek again. You ask if there's any backup ration. Someone laughs. No barley means no breakfast. No breakfast means short tempers. And short tempers in the embalming hut? Well, they tend to get ritualistic. Still, the bodies aren't going to mummify themselves. You're sent to help with a merchant's wife and her unfortunate cousin, both of whom died of what the priest delicately called unclean spirits in the lungs, which is old Egyptian for bad water and worse hygiene. You're not told how many days they've been dead. The smell tells you plenty. The cousin arrives first, and she's in rough shape. Her limbs are stiff, her skin mottled and already puckered with the telltale signs of early rot. The eyes have caved in, the jaws stuck open, like she's trying to complain about her seating arrangement. You stifle a groan and reached for the myrrh. As you begin the cleaning, a gust of desert wind howls through the open shutters. It's a small thing, natural really. Except the candle flames flicker against the breeze. Someone makes the sign of Tauret, the protective goddess, across their chest. You hesitate, then do the same. The embalmer growls something about bad omens, but continues anyway. Then the bugs arrive. Not just a few flies, swarms. They pour in like smoke, tiny, buzzing, clinging to your face, your hands, the body. You swat them away, but they come back stronger. Your co-worker drops a jar. 100 glassy black beetles scatter across the floor. Scarabs, maybe, or just very determined invaders. Someone didn't purify the room properly, the scribe hisses, arms tight to his chest. Now they come. You ask who they are. No one answers. You light more incense, pray harder, and keep working. As you clean the body, you notice something odd. Deep gouges along the rib cage, like scratches made after death. Jackal did that, someone mutters. Or something worse. You don't ask what could be worse than a jackal. You've got enough nightmare fuel as it is. After the cousin, you move to the merchant's wife. She's better preserved, thanks to her family's quick payment and the use of imported natron. You can tell by the crust along her back. It crackles slightly as you sponge it off. But just as you begin the ritual opening, the priest storms in. His expression is thunder. He holds up a small clay figure, a shabti, painted with crude symbols and missing its left arm. Who placed this? He demands. No one speaks. The room stills. The priest looks around, eyes sharp. This shabti was not ordered. It is marked. He throws it against the wall. It breaks. Something black spills out. Ash, or soot, or something worse. Everyone recoils. You suddenly feel very, very cold. Fringe fact of the day. Some embalmers believe shabtis could carry curses. If prepared incorrectly, or intentionally, they might bind a soul inside the figure. There are stories of workers who found them whispering at night. Of course, these are stories. Probably. You're extra careful with the wraps. You say the prayers exactly as taught. You don't cut corners, even when your fingers go numb from tension. Historians still argue whether embalmers themselves believed in the supernatural consequences of their rites, or if much of it was performance for the families and temples. You don't care. Not when the candles burn in strange rhythms and the air tastes metallic. At midday you hear someone's been paid in beer instead of barley today. That's a trade you would have made, until you find out the beer was used beer, as in half-drunk leftovers from a scribe's wake. Your stomach turns. You eat a dried fig in silence and pretend it's a feast. The last body of the day is an old man. Nothing special, but he's wrapped in fabric you've never seen before. Soft, sea-coloured linen that doesn't match the usual rolls. You ask about it. The embalmer frowns. Trade linen, he mutters. Phoenician, maybe. Imported fabric. Expensive. Out of place. You start to wrap, careful not to tear it. But the moment the linen touches the skin, the air changes. Heavier. You hear a sound, like whispering, just barely. You look up. No one else reacts. You keep wrapping. By the end of the day, you're exhausted. Your hands are raw. Your knees crack when you stand. And the temple bell is late. It rings well after sunset, which it never does. Another omen. Just what you needed. You clean the tools alone. The others left early, muttering about bad energy. You try to ignore the flickering shadows on the walls, the way the clay jars seem to shift slightly when you're not looking. You hum a lullaby, something soft and old. Just as you're blowing out the last lamp, you hear it. A laugh. Not loud, not cruel, just there. You freeze. It stops. You wait a long moment, then slowly back out of the room, heart hammering. You don't breathe again until you're outside, under the stars. That night, no one speaks during dinner. No jokes, no complaints, just chewing. And when you lie down to sleep, you tuck a scarab amulet under your pillow and whisper a prayer to Bastet, goddess of protection. You dream of clay figures walking. You dream of beetles. You dream of someone, or something, waiting behind the jars. And worst of all, you dream of laughter. By the 9th day, your hands are permanently scented with natron and failure. Your back has begun to curve like the bronze hooks you use, and you've forgotten what it feels like to not have resin under your fingernails. You've survived curses, bugs, bad omens, and worse pay. You've kept your head down, your prayers steady, and your rap lines mostly symmetrical. But now it's time for clean-up. Not the kind you do at the end of a job, brushing stray bits of linen off the floor or rinsing your tools in sour wine. No, this is the sacred mess clean-up. The real, behind the scenes, no one sings songs about this kind of labour that even the gods would probably outsource if they could. You're assigned to the refuse pit. It sounds harmless. It is not. Behind the embalmer's hut, beyond the walls where the incense trails die and the prayers fade, there's a narrow alleyway leading to a sunken trench. This is where everything that isn't divine gets dumped. Used natron, soiled wrappings, discarded resin globs, and the occasional goat part from purification rituals you're not clear to ask about. The smell hits first. It's not the rotting corpse smell you've gotten used to. It's a different breed altogether. Acrid, damp, and somehow greasy. You gag. You try to be quiet about it. You fail. There's no glamour here. You scrape hardened bits of brain from bronze tools, pry dried resin off amphora rims, and try very hard not to question what's floating in the corner bucket. There are bugs here that don't even blink at incense. They just land, nibble, and keep going. And then there's the goat dung. Apparently, someone used it as a component in a protective paste. Don't ask, just shovel. You lose track of time as the sun climbs. Sweat pours down your spine. A mouse scurries past your foot. You consider whether the afterlife includes back pain. The worst is when you're told to clean the god's table, the slab where the body was washed, anointed and prepared. It's holy, sure but also slippery, covered in a waxy residue from years of sacred oils, bodily fluids, and whatever spice blend they used last week that stained your hands red for 3 days. You kneel with a pumice stone and scrub, murmuring the correct purification chant. May all impurities fall away. You glance at the drain channel. Something stares back. Just a toad, you think. Don't kill it, says a voice behind you. That's the keeper. You spin. It's one of the old embalmers, barely seen during daylight. He points at the toad. Been there since I was an apprentice. Eats the flies. Brings balance. You nod like that makes sense and carry on. Historians still argue whether refuse pits like this were considered sacred in any way, or simply utilitarian waste zones. Some suggest that even the waste had to be handled with reverence, burned ritually or buried away from temple grounds. Others believe embalmers just did what was efficient and hoped the gods weren't too picky. Your fringe fact of the day? There's a rumour among apprentices that every now and then they find an extra hand in the linen scraps. Too many bodies, not enough jars, someone says, chuckling. You try not to remember that when you find something buried in the corner beneath a crusted tarp. You don't lift it. You don't look. You just keep scrubbing. The day drags like a funeral barge against the Nile's current. You haul full baskets of waste down to the ash pit. You burn linen soaked in things you refuse to name. You spill resin on your foot and spend 10 full minutes trying to peel your sandal off without losing skin. At one point, you doze off against a clay urn. You dream of soap. You're shaken awake by a co-worker who tells you someone threw a sacred amulet into the scrap pile. By accident, he adds. Probably. You both dig through the sticky mess, hands coated in things you're absolutely certain weren't alive this morning. Finally, you find it. a tie-it knot still slick with resin but otherwise intact. You hand it off with ceremony, as if you didn't just pull it from something that hissed. Your reward? More cleaning. The embalmer's hut doesn't run on magic and sacred texts alone. It runs on people like you, who keep the floors clean, the oils labelled, the linen sorted by length and cleanliness. It runs on hours no one counts, and labour no one praises. And yet, there's a strange pride in it. When the god's table finally gleams, when the tools are stacked neatly, not a speck of gore remaining, when the incense is restocked, and even the toad is perched on a clean corner of stone, you feel something settle. You've scrubbed away decay, you've untangled the chaos left by death, you've made room for the divine to enter, and then you sneeze, hard, right into a vat of powdered natron. It burns. Of course it burns. You stagger outside, eyes watering, nose coated in what you hope isn't dried spleen. The others are gathered, watching the setting sun. One hands you a fig, another pats your back like you just ran a marathon. You're one of us now, someone says. You've cleaned the pit. You're not sure whether to thank them or cry. That night your dreams are oddly peaceful. You're floating, wrapped in linen, the stars above glowing gently. The world is quiet, clean. You wake up with your face in the corner of your mat and a dried fig stuck to your neck. Still counts. There's a strange silence in the hut today. No clatter of bronze tools, no muttered prayers or half-chanted rites. Just the heavy weight of waiting. Even the toad, your unlikely cleaning companion, is nowhere to be found. The air is thick, warmer than usual, as if the gods themselves are holding their breath. You're told to wait outside. That's never good. You sit in the shade of the storage wall staring at a reed basket slowly unravelling in the heat. Your hands itch with idleness. You're not used to being still anymore. Eventually the embalmer calls for you. The tone is clipped. You step back inside, and the first thing you notice is the body. She's laid out in perfect form, arms crossed, lips sealed. Wrapped so precisely that you know it wasn't you who did it. This was a master's work. Dozens of perfect linen layers, hardened with resin into a shell that glints faintly in the lamplight. You recognise her face, or what's left of it beneath the gilded mask. This was a princess, a real one. You heard the whispers when she arrived 2 days ago. Bitten by a cobra, foul play, the pharaoh's favourite once. Whatever the truth, she now lies before you, halfway to eternity. You're not here to rap. You're not here to chant. You're here to be judged. The priest is already there, flanked by the high scribe and 2 older embalmers who've seen more afterlives than you've had dates. The priest doesn't speak at first. He just looks at you, eyes narrowed like he's trying to see through your skin and into your car. Step forward, he finally says. You do. They hand you a linen strip and a small golden charm, an ankh, symbol of life. You're to tie it into the final layer. Seems simple, except nothing in this place is ever simple. Do it properly, the priest says, and your name will be recorded. Fail, and the gods will forget you. You kneel, hands trembling, sweat dripping into your eyes. You press the charm into the linen just above her heart, then begin wrapping the final band, right to left. Spiral inward, firm but not strangling. You chant, loud enough to be heard, soft enough to be respectful. May your life return tenfold in the next world. May your name be spoken for 1,000 years. Silence. You wait. The priest leans in, inspects the knot, then nods. The others follow suit. You've done it. It's done. And yet, something's off. The priest speaks again. This was a test. Of course it was. He continues. You have worked. You have endured. You have cleaned the filth and placed the sacred. You have broken bone and bowed to ritual. But there is one final lesson. He steps aside, revealing a second body, wrapped less neatly, less cared for. A servant, maybe. Or worse, someone forgotten. You will prepare her alone, he says. Alone. That's rare. You don't ask questions. You begin the rites. You clean her skin, even though no one will see it again. You wrap her gently, evenly, whispering old chants and a few new ones of your own. You place a clay scarab over her heart. No one asked you to, but it feels right. Historians still argue whether the final stages of embalming were always supervised, or if apprentices were sometimes left to complete the work in solitude, an act of trust or a final exam. You now know both. Your fringe fact of the day is a whispered joke from the old embalmer earlier. You know you're ready when the gods stop correcting you. By the time the sun is low, both bodies are ready. Yours less perfect but filled with intention, the kind you hope matters more than polish. The priest returns. He places a single feather, Mart's feather of truth, on your folded hands. You won't last long here, he says, almost kindly. Not because you're weak, but because you're beginning to care too much. You don't ask what he means. You're not sure he'd answer. That night, as the barks carry the bodies downriver, you sit near the water. Watch the torches flicker as they fade into the dusk. You think about every body you touched, every life you wrapped, every brain you scrambled and heart you nearly dropped, and still the stars return. You've lasted longer than anyone expected. The night air settles gently now, warm and dry, brushing across your skin like the linen you've wrapped so many times. The hum of insects fades into the background, and even the moon seems to hang a little lower, like it's leaning in closer to listen. You've been through a lot tonight. Heat, pressure, sacred rituals, unspoken threats, and more than one mystery best left unsolved. And yet, you're still here, breathing slowly, watching the Nile drift by, smooth as polished stone. The rush is gone now. The tools are cleaned, the bodies are prepared, and the oil lamps have long since burned out. What remains is a stillness, a soft, earned quiet. And somewhere in the distance, maybe just beyond the horizon, a whisper of incense floats on the air. You don't have to scramble any more brains tonight. No linen to untangle, no chance to repeat. Just this moment, just the calm. You imagine the stars above as tiny bits of natron, scattered by the gods to preserve the sky. You let your breath match the river's rhythm, slow, gentle, ancient. Your hands, tired from the day, rest in your lap. They did sacred work today, even if it didn't feel like it at the time. So close your eyes now, friend. You won't be judged tonight. You've done enough. You are enough.